What's going on, guys? Welcome to American Overwatch. Um, we have a lot to talk about, so if you got some time to sit down and watch the video to the end, it's going to get pretty interesting. I'm going to tell you my opinion on what's going on with President Trump and President Zelensky's phone call, the reactions from the Democrat side and the Republican side, and what I think the ground truth is. First of all, let's just start out with what the phone conversation was. The transcript has been released, and you can go to AmericanOverwatch.org and sign up to become a member, and then just click on the member area and go down to resources, and you'll be able to pull up the transcript. Later on, I'll also post the whistleblower complaint, so you'll be able to read that in full as well. But the basis of the phone conversation was a congratulatory phone call from President Trump to President Zelensky because President Zelensky had just recently won his election. They also just won the majority in the parliament. And so I believe this was probably the second conversation they had over the phone. And it over the last several years, or even possible decade, Ukraine had been facing high corruption within the government. And in the conversation, President Zelensky even says that the tactics that President Trump used to win his election he was greatly inspired by, and they employed. So President Zelensky used the same tactics that President Trump did, and said that he admired President Trump and that he idolized him and that he used his tactics to win. And so basically, the conversation goes back and forth, and it's pretty friendly. And he says, let me get to where the meat and the potatoes are. President Zelensky says, well, yes, to tell you the truth, we are trying to work hard because we want to drain the swamp. He uses the phrase, we want to drain the swamp. Now, where did we hear that before? We heard that with President Trump before. So we can already see this relationship building between the two leaders. President Zelensky has high admiration for President Trump. He really appreciates everything that President Trump's done as far as weeding out the corruption and building a strong economy and building up jobs, things like that. President Zelensky really admires that about him, and he wants to do the same in his own country. We brought in many new people, not the old politicians, not the typical politicians, because we want to have a new format, a new type of government. You are a great teacher for us in that, is what President Zelensky says. Verbatim, I'm going to post it for you to read. It's already posted on there, actually. You can go read it. Well, it's very nice of you to say that. This is President Trump. It's very nice for you to say that. I will say we do a lot for Ukraine. We spend a lot of effort and a lot of time, much more than the European countries are doing, such as Germany. Almost does nothing for you. All they do is talk, and it goes on like that. But when I was speaking to Angela Merkel, she talks Ukraine, but she doesn't do anything. A lot of European countries are the same way. He goes on. I wouldn't say that it's reciprocal necessarily. Let me say this. I think it's something you want to look at. But the United States has been very good to Ukraine. I wouldn't say it's reciprocal necessarily because things are happening that are not good, but the United States has been very good to Ukraine. And basically, we know how Trump speaks. What he's saying that there are bad things happening in Ukraine. We're trying to help out Ukraine. We know it's not reciprocal because you're not in a position to help us, is what he's saying. So, and President Zelensky says you're absolutely right. Not only 100%, but actually 1,000%. And then he goes on to say, I am very grateful to you for that because the United States is doing quite a lot for Ukraine, much more than the European Union, especially when we're talking about sanctions against the Russian Federation. I would also like to thank you for great support in the area of defense. We are ready to continue to cooperate for the next steps, especially or specifically when we are all ready to buy more javelins from the United States for defense purposes. The president says, I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot, and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of the wealthy people, the server. They say Ukraine has it. There are a lot of things that went on. The whole situation. I think you're surrounding yourself with some of the same people. I would like to have the Attorney General call you and or your people, and I would like you to get to the bottom of it. As you saw yesterday, the whole nonsense ended with a very poor performance by a man named Robert Mueller as an incompetent performance, but they say a lot of it started with Ukraine. Whatever you can do, it's very important that you do it if that's possible. President Zelenskyy responds, yes, it is very important for me to find everything out you just mentioned earlier. So let me explain what CrowdStrike is. CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity firm that investigated and searched basically the Democratic National Convention servers and basically Hillary Clinton's emails. So President Trump right now is trying to get to the bottom of the corruption and the scandal that occurred with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's emails. Okay, that's all he's trying to do right now. And he's invoking his authority as President of the United States to uphold the law and enforce enforce laws that prohibit corruption within the United States government. That's what he's doing. But Adam Schiff would have you think that this is a mafia or mob-like style shakedown. So as I continue on here, it says, the president says, good, because I heard you had a prosecutor who was very good and was shut down, and that was really unfair. A lot of people are talking about that, the way you shut down very good. The way they shut your very good prosecutor down, and you had some very bad people involved. Mr. Giuliani is a highly respected man. He was a mayor of New York City, a great mayor, and I would like him to call you, and I will ask him to call you along with Attorney General. Rudy very much knows what's happening and very capable guy. And it goes on. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of the people want to find out if that's so. Whatever you can find out with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into that, it sounds horrible to me. Again, the President of the United States is looking into any possible corruption and is asking for a foreign power to look into a Burisma Holdings Ukrainian company where Hunter Biden was sitting on the board for, who had no business, no credentials, no nothing, who was earning $50,000 a month, sitting on this board of a Ukrainian company who was being investigated by a Ukrainian prosecutor, and then all of a sudden was fired. And the allegation is that Joe Biden was the one that did that. And allegedly was the one that was withholding funds from the Ukrainian government in aid in order to pressure the Ukrainian government to fire this prosecutor from looking into this company. Now, if that's not corruption, I don't know what the hell is. That's corruption 101. And the president is well within his authority to look into any kind of corruption. And I don't give a damn if President Biden or former Vice President Biden is running for candidacy for president. This isn't a quid pro quo, and this isn't some conspiracy to oust the number one candidacy. Because let me tell you something, Elizabeth Warren is a second runner. She's right up there with him, even without this. And let me tell you, as far as I'm concerned, all the other gas and all the other mind-boggling, like, loopy-de-doo, like, who listens to record players and shit going on with Joe Biden is just absolutely insane. And if this continues, Joe Biden's going to lose anyways. So it doesn't really matter. He wasn't even a threat to the presidency, to the 2020 elections anyway. And if Elizabeth Warren is now the front runner, she's still not going to get elected. She's too socialist. The moderate Democrats are sick and tired of it. They're not going to vote. The swing voters aren't going to vote Democrat. They're sick and tired of this crap. They're sick and tired of the witch hunt of people trying to impeach President Trump from the day that he started running for presidency. So this is just absolutely absurd. So enough about the phone conversation. That's basically how it went. Okay, let's get into what Adam Schiff had to say about it.
Without objection, the chair reserves the right to recess the hearing at any time. The presidential oath of office requires the President of the United States to do two things: faithfully execute his or her office and protect and defend the Constitution.
No shit.
That oath, of course, cannot be honored if the President does not first defend the country. If our national security is jeopardized, if our country is left undefended, the necessity to faithfully execute the office becomes moot. Where there is no country, there is no office to execute. And so the duty to defend the nation is foundational to the President's responsibilities. But what of this second responsibility, to defend the Constitution? What does that really mean? The founders were not speaking, of course, of a piece of parchment. Rather, they were expressing the obligation of the President to defend the institutions of our democracy, to defend our system of checks and balances that the Constitution enshrines, to defend the rule of law, a principle upon which the idea of America was born, that we're a nation of laws,
investigating
not
corruption.
Men. If we do not defend the nation, there is no Constitution. But if we do not defend the Constitution, there is no nation worth defending. Yesterday, we were presented with the most graphic evidence yet that the President of the United States has betrayed his oath of office, betrayed his oath to defend our national security, and betrayed his oath to defend our Constitution. For yesterday, we were presented with a record of a call between the President of the United States and the President of Ukraine, in which the President, our President,
listen to this,
sacrificed our national security and our Constitution for his personal political benefit. To understand how we did so, we must first understand just how overwhelmingly dependent Ukraine is on the United States, militarily, financially, diplomatically, and in every other way. And not just on the United States, but on the person of the President. Ukraine was invaded by its neighbor, by our common adversary, by Vladimir Putin's Russia.
Yeah.
It remains occupied by Russian irregular forces in a long simmering war. Ukraine desperately needs our help, and for years we have given it, and on a bipartisan basis. That is until 2 months ago, when it was held up inexplicably by President Trump. It is in this context, after a brief congratulatory call from President Trump to President Zelenskyy on April 21st, and after the President's personal emissary, Rudy Giuliani, made it abundantly clear to Ukrainian officials over several months that the President wanted dirt on his political opponent, it is in this context that the new President of Ukraine would speak to Donald Trump over the phone on July 25th. President...
Okay, I gotta stop it. So, the reality is that this guy is just twisting and manipulating. These Democrats are just so damn good at twisting and manipulating the essence of what is real. I can't even. Let's get into what Kamala Harris had to say, and then we'll move on.
What did you make of the report in the whistleblower's complaint that not only did he conduct this extortionist move against the head of Ukraine, but his people around Trump, what they did was they took the verbatim, word-for-word transcript and buried it somewhere in some sort of catacomb used for very sensitive, top-secret information.
Yeah, and that's called a cover-up. And you are right. My career as a prosecutor in a court, I would be arguing that this is evidence of consciousness of guilt. This is evidence of knowing that what happened in that phone call was wrong. It violates ethical rules. It violates the law. It violates the position of trust that the president should hold in the name of the people of the United States. And I'll tell you, Chris, having been in my career as a prosecutor and an attorney general, I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States. Second only to the United States Department of Justice. This is completely, by every act that this president has done, including this one, an attack not only on our democracy but our system of justice.
What did you think of Joseph McGuire, the acting director of national intelligence today? He made all. I watched the early performance, which was on TV this morning, public testimony. He kept saying, "I went to the White House to get the approval of whether to release it or not." It seemed to me he was in a position of asking the people being complained about, the president and his people, whether it was okay to put it out or not. What did you make of the whole?
Well, I can't talk about what we didn't. It was in a classified setting. But you know enough to know that there was clearly an attempt to cover up. And eventually the American people now know, and the investigation needs to continue.
Well, he continues here with.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. So, she says it's a cover-up, right? So, the ODNI does his due diligence, because let me explain how this happens, okay? So, a member within... So, it turns out that the whistleblower is an employee of the CIA, okay? Now, the CIA... I guess we can get into the whistleblower's complaint. So this employee from the CIA, which does fall within the intelligence community's and the ODNI's Office of Responsibility. So he is an employee of the ODNI, and he becomes aware through secondhand knowledge, allegedly through a dozen of representatives from the White House, where allegations of abuse of power, trying to shake down the Ukrainian president in order to abuse the president of the United States' power in order to gain dirt on former Vice President Biden, right? So that's basically the essence of the complaint. I'll post the full complaint up there for you to read. Okay. He also goes into Giuliani and his dealings with him and things like that. And he mentions a couple of other people that actually were witness to the call who told him. So there's actually by name people in the room that told him what was said on the call, which is very scary. It's very scary to me that they would release something like this, fully unredacted with names in there and things like that, because it really puts their personal safety at risk. But so this whistleblower has secondhand knowledge. Okay, now in the intelligence community, in the human intelligence community, particularly the CIA, okay, in order to verify the veracity of a report, they judge the accuracy of the information based on placement and access of the source. So if the source of the information is a CIA employee who files a whistleblower complaint and says, "I heard from so-and-so," he's second removed from the access of the information. So the veracity of this complaint shouldn't be credible. Why anybody's saying it's credible is beyond me. Because in the 12 years of intelligence that I've been in part of, is that in order to verify the veracity of the report, you need first-hand placement and access to the information. And you have to judge whether or not the person's past reporting is reliable. Now, given that this person is a CIA employee, it would go without saying that the benefit of the doubt is that this person is reporting reliably, unless they had some sort of political bias or some sort of political agenda. Now, we don't know who the whistleblower is, so we can't verify whether or not this person had a political agenda or a political bias. Now, allegedly, they found this information out secondhand And so we're going to try and give the guy or the woman, whoever it is, the benefit of the doubt that this person is acting on the best interest of the United States, and they're reporting this information. Now, here's the thing, okay? The employee works for the intelligence community, but the information's coming from outside the intelligence community, okay? So this person becomes aware of alleged corruption or allegations of corruption, right? And the only thing that they know how to do, the only way that they know about going to report this information is through the Whistleblower Act. Is basically to go to the ICIG, the ICIG, and then the ODNI and file a formal complaint, a whistleblower complaint, and then the ODNI goes, well, wait a minute, this information has nothing to do with any wrongdoing within the intelligence community. It's got nothing to do with intelligence activities. It's a member within the intelligence community reporting alleged corruption, but this isn't anything to do with intelligence activities. So does it fall underneath the Whistleblower Act? Furthermore, is there presidential I can't think of the word now. But basically, he goes to the White House counsel to find out whether or not that this has presidential privilege, basically. And basically, it's two heads of state speaking on a phone conversation. So the president basically has executive privilege. So he's trying to find out if he releases this information, if it's going to violate another law. In addition to that, underneath the Whistleblower Act, he's got a 7-day window to report this to Congress, to the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee. So he's trying to figure out, okay, does it fit underneath the president's executive privilege, and does it meet the Whistleblower Act 7-day window? So he goes to the White House counsel to find out if this does have presidential executive privilege. And then he goes to the Department of Justice counsel and he says, does it fit the 7-day window? Does this fall into Whistleblower Act? Well, the White House says, yes, it does. Appears to have presidential executive privilege. So his hands are tied. He can't really release it. And then he goes to the Department of Justice counsel and they say, no, not really. It doesn't really fall underneath that. So you're not necessarily governed by the 7-day window. So now he's got some more time to figure out what it is he needs to do with this unprecedented reporting. Because it's never happened before. It's never happened where a CIA intelligence officer becomes aware of corruption from the president, which in of itself kind of seems sketchy at best. So anyway, with that being said, let's listen in on what our fair lady had to say.
Thank you very much.
Applying for a job and getting 66 million letters of recommendation and losing to a corrupt human tornado.
I mean, she weighs in on this, and she even says that he's a corrupt human tornado and that, he's basically scum and he's an illegitimate president. And so Hillary Clinton has got something to say. What that tells me is that, one, okay, and I also read in a tweet later, or yesterday, that evidently Mitt Romney's advisor sits on a board for Burisma. So now we got Mitt Romney, probably the only Republican in Congress that's essentially speaking out against President Trump. Then we got Hillary Clinton weighing in on it. What? Why? For what purpose? And it all boils down to basically this. President Trump is investigating corruption within the United States former government involving Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Mitt Romney, and anyone else associated to Burisma. everyone who's speaking out, including the Democrats, have a political agenda. They're trying to discredit President Trump in order to get their name out there and become the front runner of the DNC and a Democratic candidate. Meanwhile, undermining the President of the United States, risking national security, and risking, what precedent does this say? This is an unprecedented moment because now, what, are we just going to start releasing transcripts between foreign leaders? I mean, what is the trustworthiness of other foreign powers and their leaders with talking with our president if they think that, it's possible that their conversations could be released? It's absolutely, utterly insane that this is even happening. And I got nothing against the whistleblower right now, okay? I don't know who they are. If it's true that they became aware of this secondhand, I don't know if there was a political bias or agenda from the people that were actually reporting it to this individual. I don't know if there was one with the individual that reported it. But we have to take on good faith that this person's acting in good faith until we find out otherwise. But regardless, the president is acting in good faith in that the Democrats are now trying to twist and manipulate this situation, risking national security and the trust within the international community, all for political gain. Okay, this is insane. 3 hours after the transcript was released, President Trump, his campaign earned $1 million. If this doesn't tell you that the American people are sick and tired of Antifa, the leftists, the triggered, the whiny snowflakes of America who just don't get it, who are pressuring, pushing people, censoring First Amendment rights, trying to take away Second Amendment rights, trying to turn this country into a socialist economy, trying to take money out of the rich who worked very hard to get it. This is just absolutely, utterly mind-blowing. The Democrats' ideology has fallen off the deep end, and there's no way it's coming back. I'm excited for the 2020 elections now, and I cannot wait to see what happens. It is going to be historic. Landslide win. Mark my words. You heard it here first from American Overwatch. It's going to be a landslide win. I would venture to say, with the exception of the state of California and maybe the state of New York, that he wins the entire country. There might be a few in the New England area that still might vote Democratic because they've always voted that way. But I'm telling you now, if Joe Biden isn't the front runner, especially after this, and Elizabeth Warren becomes the front runner, then there's absolutely no way she's winning. All right, you heard it here first from American Overwatch. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.